Hello, all you amazing people. It is Riley LH here again and we are back here with the blue Miata, and we have all new polyurethane bushings. Powerflex was nice enough to go and send me out a kit of their polyurethane bushings for the car, and my bushings aren't in the best shape. They're 31 years old, they're rubber, they're not in the best shape. So they sent me out all new polyurethane bushings. I'm pretty excited to get them in. I do have a track day coming up soon, so I'm gonna have to get this done fast. And I also do have extended lower ball joints coming in. They're still coming in the mail, so I'm gonna start on the rear of the car first. There is a lot of bushings. I don't have to change my diff bushings because those are already polyurethane bushings. So the diff, I'm not gonna take out. I may not drop the subframe. I was thinking about dropping the subframe, painting it, but since we're on a time crunch, I think I'm just gonna do all the suspension pieces, and I may have sway bars coming in soon as well, so hopefully I do get those, because this car, I want it to drive completely different. I want to drive it, make it drive as good as it possibly can, and these bushings are definitely gonna help with that. So Powerflex provides you with everything you need, from grease to the bushings, and it's honestly a really easy install. It's just a little bit time consuming, and we do have to take out every suspension piece. All the tools you're going to need are common at-hand hand tools, and Powerflex provides you with everything you need bushing-wise. They give you grease, they give you the bushing themselves, and it's just your job to install them. The install is really easy. You just take the old bushings out, which is arguably the hardest part. Once you get the old bushings out, you put some grease on the bushings, put them in, put the suspension pieces back in, and the job's over. Like I said, we're gonna start with the rear first because I have extended lower ball joints still coming in the mail. So we're gonna go ahead and break these lug nuts so we can jack it up. Okay, now that all the lugs are broken loose, we just take our jack our car up, and we're gonna put it on jack stands. Hopefully not for long though. Okay, so now that the car is jacked up on jack stands and the fronts are blocked off, we can take off our wheels. Okay, so now that the wheels are off and under the car, you can see my brakes aren't in the best shape. My brake pads are getting a little bit low, and luckily, another new sponsor of mine, Hawk Performance, they're sending me out a new set of brakes, and they should be in by the end of this week. So I am just now remembering I am missing one socket that I need. This one socket, I think it's a 32 or a 29 millimeter for the main nut, I don't have. So I'm gonna have to actually wait a little bit to start taking everything off completely, but there's things I can already get done now, like the brakes. There's a couple of things I want to take off in the rear for weight reduction because I don't need them anymore, and then we'll pick this project back up once I have that socket. So it is now the next day, and I got the socket I needed. I had to pick up a 32 millimeter socket so I could get my axle nut off. A little bit of a waste of a day yesterday because that was an overlook on my part. Completely forgot I was going to need a new socket. But on these axle nuts, you do have to punch out that area right there to actually get it off. So I have a broken punch that's not any good and a hammer. So we're gonna get that out first, then we're gonna take off the nut, then we're gonna take off the brakes, and then we can start taking out all the suspension pieces. Okay, so now we got all the rear suspension out on the Miata on both the passenger and driver side. And you can see one of my axles are out. My driver's side axle is out because my axle boot is absolutely torn shreds. But O'Reilly's hooked me up. I got a new axle boot already. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace that. It should be pretty easy. Just take off this clip, get this portion of the axle off, put the new boot on, put the new clips on and stuff, and then slide that back on, and we're already done and able to put back in the axles. And then I got a 2-jaw puller, so I'm not having to light these bushings on fire or have a press to get these out. So I just take the 2-jaw puller, wrap them around, and then ratchet it down. It will push the bushing straight out. If we do need a little bit of persuasion for these bushings to come out, I will hit it with some fire, because a lot of open concrete space, we don't have to worry about burning too much down. So a little bit of heat persuasion plus this 2-jaw puller will get these bushings out. But we're gonna go ahead and pull away some of this bushing by cutting it off, so then we can have a spot for our puller. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, we can hook our 2-jaw puller up to it, and we're not gonna have the bushing in the way. So we'll go ahead and get this around it and start compressing. Okay, so we got one bushing out. It was a little bit of a process, but you can see why I'm replacing these. You can see cracks all around there, and same on the other side. There's areas where I did cut the bushing to give it some extra relief, but very, very soft rubber. You can press it in with your fingers. So, out with old, and in with the new, as Chris Fix would say. So, instead of going and waiting and going through that process again, because that took forever, we're gonna make it easier for the both of us, and we're just gonna snap through it. Okay, now that all the bushings are out on this control arm, and on everything else, and everything's painted, it's time to install the bushings. These bushings you just press in by hand, but if they do need a little bit more persuasion, you just simply go and put them in the fridge for a little bit, so they'll go and cool down. Or you can go ahead and use a C-clamp with 2 washers and press them in. So we're gonna tear open the grease packet, put a little bit of grease on everything. Now that it's lubed up, you just simply slide them in. And now that we got that sleeve in on both ends, we just repeat the process. Okay, so now all the rear suspension is done, so now we can start getting in on the car. The Powerflex bushings went in really easy, especially with the lube that's provided. The ones that did give me a struggle were the sway bar and link bushings, but even those, with putting them in the refrigerator for a while, they were easy enough to get in with a big C-clamp. Well, instead of waiting, let's go ahead and get this rear suspension in. I'm gonna start off with the passenger side first, and then we'll move on to the driver. Okay, so we got all the rear suspension in, passenger and driver side. So I only have the inner lower control arm bolts snugged up because I'm gonna do a home alignment with this. Yes, it's not the best way to get an alignment, but it's better than when I normally run a completely eyeballed alignment. So everything is in, torque to spec. I did have one bolt break, so I will have to come back to this later. You can see it's completely snapped, and we come over to my sway bar caps. You can see that stud is now broken, and there's no way to really replace that stud by like hammering it out and putting a new one in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill that out, and then I'm gonna just get another nut, and I'm gonna get a bolt and run a nut and bolt through there and some washers, and that should fix that issue. Torque it to its pound-foot. But I think I was only around 20 pound-foot when that snapped, it was going out anyways. So now that all the poly bushings are in, the suspension should be way stiffer. I'm gonna try hopping on the bash bar and jumping on it when it's on the ground to see how much more travel there is or less travel there is. But we're gonna go ahead and put on the wheels and get her back down. Okay, so now that we got all the front suspension out, it's going to be the same thing as the rear getting the bushings out. We're going to cut this portion out. Then we're going to take a bolt, put it through, take our 2-jaw puller and wrap it around. And the bushings out. Between a 2-jaw puller, heat, and a hammer, you can get these bushings out really easy. So now we'll just go and snap through the rest of them. And all the front suspension is done. So now all we gotta do is press in the bushings and get it put back in. Okay, so now it's actually time to install these bushings, and the front upper bushings are a little bit different. Instead of it being a 2-piece system, it's only a 1-piece system, and then you have your sleeve. And a pro tip I learned installing the other bushings was install the sleeve first and then install the insert, and it makes it go in a lot easier and prevents air bubbles, especially with the 2-piece ones. Lube it up. And then we're going to take our control arm and we're going to push our bushing in. Again, a rubber mallet can be a huge help during this job. If it's being really stubborn, just feel a little tap and it'll go straight in. But before we install our suspension, we're going to change these steering rack bushings because there's a lot of play still in them. And all we have to do is get off our tie rod and 4 bolts, and then we can take off our steering rack or leave it in the car and just slide out the bushings. Okay, so as you can see, the Miata is back on the ground and in a garage, but we'll talk about that in another video. The PowerFlex bushings are in and it feels amazing. I've already been to one track day on the bushings and I'm in love with how the car feels. With the extended lower ball joints in the front and the stiffened up suspension, it feels better than it ever has before. I can't even start to explain how good the car feels after the PowerFlex bushings, and if you guys want some for yourself, I'll have their website and all their social medias linked in the description for you. So now the car feels amazing suspension-wise, it's actually time to put some power under the hood. So I'm going to be turboing this car, so stick around for me going and actually chucking some power in this car. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys all next time. Peace out.